I'd love to hear a little bit of creative compass from you if you'd be happy to read.
Yes, definitely. Okay. During the summer of 2010, I was in my early 20s and went on a date with someone from work. We had gone to a cinema in central London to watch the documentary Bill Cunningham, New York. Bill was the beloved street photographer for the New York Times, best known for his devotion to capturing sartorial beauty on the urban streets and being pals with industry icons such as Iris Apfel and Idetta Sherman. In the documentary, we follow him through his daily life, riding his trusted bicycle around Manhattan. At the time of filming, he was 80 and still as passionate as ever about his work. After the film, my date suggested grabbing a drink in the bar, but I remember making up an excuse to leave. The reason I wanted to cut it short was because I was so fired up by the documentary that all I wanted to do was go home, be alone with my thoughts, and scribble down my ideas. I'd fallen in love with Bill's wit, charm, creative outlook, and authenticity, and felt bubbles of excitement fizzing up in my belly. It was all I could think about. I was more interested in learning more about this kooky octogenarian photographer on screen. Born in 1929, Bill lived in the rent-controlled apartment block for artists at Carnegie Hall for over 60 years. He didn't have a proper bed, wardrobe, or kitchen. He slept surrounded by old filing cabinets full of his film strips and used a shared toilet in the hall. He could have had more. He was extraordinarily successful and beloved, but he didn't need much to live on. In a clip shown in the documentary at Paris Fashion Week, he was called the most important person on earth, always welcomed far beyond the VIP ropes. Yet, to everyone's bewilderment, he chose to rip up a large cheque he received with Details magazine, which he helped to launch in 1982, was sold to Condé Nast. Why? Because he wanted a simple, manageable life, dedicated to his art. He didn't want to move out of Carnegie Hall or surround himself with other additional material items. He didn't want to be bought. It would cost him too much. Freedom was what made him feel rich. Freedom in time, space, choices. My favourite line from the documentary is, "If you don't take money, they can't tell you what to do, kid." He cared deeply about photography and people, documenting the beauty he saw on the street. That was what got him out of bed every day. Life was what he saw through a lens, and the total creative freedom that came with it. At the time, I felt as though he was speaking directly to me, that inexperienced 20-something in the cinema, offering the secret to a creative life. Try not to be bought. It's not just about what you make, it's about how you spend your days and how you feel. The message I took from Bill was this: keep your overheads low. Don't fall into the trap of having too many things. Live a simple life while you build your art portfolio. Don't trap yourself by acquiring too many things you don't need. Keep your lifestyle as light and manageable as possible. Don't get distracted by soulless networking. Use your voice and your vision. This mindset helped me throughout my 20s. Don't overspend on fancy things. Stay on top of your finances and use all the free time you have to make stuff. Consume less and create more. I think living a creative life has an element of quiet rebellion to it. Say no to endless accumulation that does feel slightly rebellious these days. What are our actual essentials? For centuries, people tended to their basic needs and survival first, and then, in whatever time they had left over, they would make their art. This feels important, even in this day and age, to remember that when we put our needs first, we're able to feel freer with our creativity. Explorer Gina Chick spent 67 days in the Tasmanian wilderness for the TV show Alone Australia. Participants were stranded in the middle of winter, and each person was allowed to bring only 10 items with them. It got me thinking about need versus want. We have to look after the basics first. It's hard to create anything when you're preoccupied with food, water, or sheer survival. Perhaps we can only truly be creative with what's left over once our basic needs are met. This is why we beg, borrow, and steal, metaphorically, to make the space for our art. We have day jobs. We do other things to pay for our time, to make our art. We hope one day our art will pay the bills, but we have to keep our integrity intact until that day comes. It's important to say I have my basic needs met, and then some. I live in a warm house. I have a few different income streams. I eat well. I wake up early to get a head start on the day. I do a gentle exercise, see friends. I now have a degree of security. Many of us don't feel we have safety or security. And yet we also live in a world of endless consumerism. A recent survey found that 56% of UK adults have rooms in their homes that are unusable because of clutter. I always want to remind myself I have what I need. In fact, I have more than I need. Many of us have things, but not enough time or space to rest, write, or take up a hobby. Our creative compass wants us to make space, be it physical, emotional, or spiritual.
Oh, I love that. And that was actually really what I needed to hear today. Thank you for reading that, Emma.
Good. I was just going to say, I kind of go on to talk about how Bill Cunningham, he always inspires me to every now and again downsize my life, because I have to be reminded as well. So I'm glad I read that out.
Yeah, it's important. And these things are all, even if we know them, we need to be reminded, because the messages and the signals that we're getting from the world do lean so towards consumerism. People don't want us to be free, to have time to make things for ourselves.
Exactly. And, you know, we just live in this time of kind of not realizing that we have so many basic needs met. And I'm not even talking about people with loads of money. It's like, if you live just in a space where you can get by, it's like, okay, well, I can get by. So what can I do outside of that? I wrote about it in The Success Myth, about how there are people on these like crazy salaries and crazy jobs, but then their outgoings, like to help them with their mental health, like an expensive gym membership or like going to things they don't want to go to, it then worked out that their take-home salary was like so low. So I'm always just like doing the maths in my head of like, how can I just like earn what I need, honestly? And then for the rest of it, I'm like, I can sit in the garden and write.
Yeah. And also what is that? What is that about? Where does that need come from? Because I think for lots of people, really the needs to do more is a lot about status, security, vanity, but to be able to really interrogate that within ourselves of like, how much, what is what I need?
Yes. And it's different for all of us. Totally.
It is. And then what is extra and how can those needs be met elsewhere? I really struggle with that with creativity generally, that I used to really like making things when I was younger and doing art and paint. And as I've got older, I haven't done it. And then I kind of bought some art supplies a while ago and really struggled, because as soon as I would do it, I would think, oh God, I can't put that on the wall. It doesn't look good enough. But it's this idea that everything that we do has to be worth something of like value for the time to have been worth spending. And I really think it's probably about time that I got out of that mindset a little bit.
Well, I think that's where the rebelliousness comes in, because, and I know that's a personality trait too. And I think I'm a bit like, I'm going to do what I want. You know, that's like one of my flaws, and a good thing is I sometimes think like, I'm going to paint today and no one's going to see it and it's going to go nowhere, and like, ha, sticking it to the man. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like no one wants you to do that. That's the point. That's why we've all been programmed to have to be of worth all the time to keep afloat an economy that is like kind of a bit unstable. And it's you know, it's like history, isn't it? It's like decades and decades of programming. And so to go and do something that means nothing to anyone else but you is quite a radical act. And I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it really is. I was reading that a really helpful way to be present if you're feeling that you're ruminating or you're dealing with a lot of anxiety is to imagine that you're 80 years old, you're in your chair in your home, you maybe got a lot of body pain, but you're feeling nostalgic, and someone's given you the wish that you can come back to any day in your life and you've been planted in this day. And I always think, so you've got to kind of live your day thinking that you get to go back, and you know that everything turns out well. But often if I think what I would do, a lot of that is just the ability to be healthy, to have a sharp sense of mind, to be able to move, and actually like what I would make today.
Yeah, I know, because I also have these thoughts a lot of like when I'm an old lady and I'm like, oh, I've only got like one more book in me. Like that will be such a sad time, I think. And to be here and now and feel like I've got a bit of time, I just think, well, okay, you know, the time is yours. Try and use it in the best you can. But I do think a lot of this comes down to, and I know a lot of people listening will have different backgrounds, different setups, and like, you know, obviously everyone's got a different lens on this, but I think a lot of it comes down to like self-worth and self-permission. And honestly, like self-esteem, like a deep-rooted level of I'm worth doing this. I'm worth putting my phone on airplane mode for today. My time matters. I matter. Like, these are the things that the women who come on my retreats, these are people who have like been to Oxford University or, are highly intelligent or highly switched on or highly intuitive, or they've not gone to university, but they are like the most artistic people I've ever met in my life. And they have blocks, and the block isn't their ability, and the block isn't their tools, because they've all got laptops, and they've all got pens, they've all got paper. The block is their feeling of themselves, and that they aren't allowed to do it. And I think that is kind of what I'm trying to get at in Creative Compass is once you get all of that stuff out of the way, I think we're meant to, as humans, actually enjoy our lives.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, I definitely felt quite a need that my self-worth was very attached to having a proper job. And I think it's only now as I'm like into my 30s that I'm beginning to untangle that. And actually, my creative obsession person, who I'm really obsessed with, so hopefully she never listens to this, otherwise it would be really embarrassing, is Elf Lyons. Do you know who that is?
No, I don't.
She's a comedian and she's a clown. And I think she's so funny and she's so silly. And her work is beautiful and inspiring and takes on themes from so much other art. But when I was writing, I went to see her show at Edinburgh Fringe, and then I've seen a lot of her work since. And I think why I like it so much is because there's something in me that feels like, oh my God, I would never give myself permission to do that and express myself in the way she does. And so she's someone who to me is a real beacon of, she gets on stage and she's silly and she's made this whole life out of being creative. And I went to one of her work in progresses a while ago, and she also has a podcast about economics with her dad, who's quite a famous, serious economist.
Oh, right.
And I'm really obsessed with their dynamic and relationship, because I could tell, because I recognized his voice, that he was in the row behind me. What an interesting childhood and family setup they must have had, that he had this kind of certain background and she felt that she was able to completely pursue her creative idea and go to clown school. I just think that's so inspiring to help someone in their creative life, to help them grow up with a feeling of self-worth, that they can just do anything. I think about that a lot and how I might be able to give myself that.
That's so interesting. That it's probably the freedom that's attractive. Unless, do you want to actually do comedy and stand up and clowning? Or is it the more that she's given herself that freedom?
That she's given herself that freedom. Yeah.
I love that. I have a similar thing with someone, a writer I've always admired / been a stalker of. And I worked out that it's not that I want to be her. I'm happy being me. It's that I get this pang of envy, but not in a bad way, around her life. And it's because she doesn't pander to the stuff that we were talking about oh, must go and do this, must go and turn up here. She just writes her books, eats really nice food, hangs out with her friends, and just lives a writer's life without all the tap dancing. And I was like, that's what I'm being drawn to. And I think if you're ever feeling envious or just inspired by someone, it's what's the deep-rooted reason why? It's fascinating.
I really like that phrase, when you point the finger at someone, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. So if there's ever anyone that you feel a little bit jealous of, it's fine. I also think with comedians or clowns, I mean, I don't want to be a comedian, but what I do want is a little bit of that energy that they have in their lives of not feeling that they have to be serious, of being able to get up and be, because I think you have to really like yourself and feel quite confident to be willing to get up on stage and make people laugh.
I agree, but I also have a slightly different read on it, which is when I go to Edinburgh Fringe, and I'm going again this year, and I go every year and I love it, I sense a need for attention, sometimes not in a healthy way, actually. Of the amount of comedians I've interviewed who are kind of depressed, honestly. And so it's an outlet for kind of getting a lot of that energy out, or I don't know. I think there's a dark underbelly to some of it.
Yeah, I also wonder for everyone what their shadow artist is. Speaking about the artist way, if you're a writer who wishes they were a comedian, then there's comedians who wish they were rock stars who probably wish they were writers.
Yes.
I'm always interested in
fascinating.
What it is that people feel like they can't be, or what comes easier.
I mean, for me, I think a lot of writers don't want a physical self. Like, if I was just like atoms being able to write, I know that sounds insane, but what I mean is all I want to do is like be in the world of creating. It's starting to annoy me that I have to like drag my physical body out to do things. Like, I just kind of want to just be in my little make-believe world. And that's why I love the internet. That's why I love Substack. Like, I don't have to go anywhere. So yeah, it's
amazing.
funny.
Yeah, thank you, Emma.